All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I think we have people here from all over the world as usual.
Yeah.
So
Hello.
thank you for joining. This is Krishna Vetula from Hyderabad, India, representing Indo Universal Collaboration for Young Education. We have, of course, with us Dr. Hans Feuer and others from the international community. Hans from our International Federation of New Education Societies, IFES. So this is a joint webinar between IFES, GETC, and IUCE. Today we are really fortunate to have a gentleman from Singapore, okay, and he is has some exciting things to tell us. In fact, I was just chatting with him and said, "Oh, these are all the terminologies in digital transformation that I don't know very much about." So I'm looking forward to the to this webinar. And he said he himself is a mechanical engineer. So I thought, wow, how did you learn all these things? And he said, it's a lifetime of learning in various areas that are relevant to the modern society,
Yeah.
modern technologies. So Kishore is an experienced professional having more than 30 years of industry experience in managing IT solutions. He holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Wayne State University in the United States. He's a certified PMP and National Merit Scholar. He enjoys meeting people and adopting new technologies that can help solve industrial problems and benefit people. As the CEO of SK Deep Tech, that's what he is right now. His passion is to create a world-class brand to provide end-to-end digital transformation solutions for customers worldwide, with a special interest in the ASEAN region. So with that brief introduction, it is a real pleasure to have you on board here, Sesha, and over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Krishna Vedula. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Yeah. My name is Seshakishore Komareddy. I'm CEO of SK Deep Tech Private Limited. Today, I'm going to present you an understanding digital transformation. Basically, when you talk about digital transformation, you hear a lot of buzzwords like artificial intelligence, IoT, Industry 4.0, cyber security. Most of the time, people get confused. What is the difference between these words? So in today, I'm going to introduce you to these words from a non-technical point of view so that you will understand what each buzzword means. Okay. So to give you a brief introduction about ourselves, I used to have a company called SK Computers. We are into IT. We started off in India in 1994. And in 2002, I started my company doing software development. And last year, we ventured into India doing 2 startups, offering digital transformation solutions to clients covering areas like artificial intelligence, analytics, IoT, and other areas. Okay. We have 5 brands. One is AI Asia, which talks about artificial intelligence. We are into conversational AI area. We develop chatbots. And another brand is Analytica, where we develop predictive analytics dashboard reports. And Smart Cities is for smart cities, where we develop ISO 37120 quality certification for smart cities. And IoTika is our Internet of Things brand, where we develop end-to-end IoT solutions. And Academy is our training brand, where we provide deep tech training with industry collaboration. With this introduction, I would like to kickstart the webinar. So let's understand digital era. Now, we are all in the digital era and everybody's talking about digital technologies. Why digital technologies? If you look at the history in 1998, Kodak, they used to manufacture these photography paper. I mean, some of you might not know, but earlier we used to have photography paper. And this company used to have 170,000 employees worldwide, and they used to hold 85% of world's market share. But unfortunately, over the last few years, Kodak totally went bankrupt. Why? Because the world is changing very rapidly and new technological disruptions are happening every day in and out. And mobile is really changing the way we live, work, and play. And they say data is a new oil and digital is a new buzzword. So what is digital transformation? You keep hearing this word quite a lot. So digital transformation is nothing but helping the businesses and industry to do things fast with ease and convenience. Everybody wants to do things with fast, ease, and convenience. So from management point of view, they want to have the latest information so that they can take some corrective actions. Businesses need to be transforming to be more agile. Agile means how fast you react when something happens. So in other words, speed is the essence of business, and the total purpose of digital transformation is to improve the efficiency and productivity in an organization. Okay. So when you talk about digital transformation, as I mentioned before, you hear a lot of buzzwords. So today I'm going to touch about 20 buzzwords which you hear quite often. So I'm not going to go deep technical into each word, but I'll just introduce you from a non-technical point of view. So what you should know when you hear that buzzword. Okay. Let me start about Industry 4.0. This is the first thing you keep hearing. Everybody talks about Industry 4.0. So what is Industry 4.0? If you look at the history, with the introduction of steam power, mechanization started, and it's that we call a revolution, and we call it a first industrial revolution. And second industrial revolution happened with introduction of electricity. When electricity is introduced, we started mass production, assembly line, and all those things. We call it second industrial revolution. And third industrial revolution happened with the introduction of computers and automation. Now we are witnessing fourth industrial revolution, otherwise dubbed as Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 means machines will talk to each other and machines will talk to humans. We call it cyber physical systems. So inside machines, we keep a lot of sensors, and with the sensors, we can collect the data, and with the data, we can communicate with the machines. So this revolution, which we are witnessing, is called Industry 4.0. And this is the umbrella of the total digital transformation we are going to talk about. That means in Industry 4.0, we don't have any specific software, we don't have any specific hardware. It is the overall revolution that is happening that we are witnessing. We call it Industry 4.0. Okay. So the next buzzword is big data. You keep hearing this word also quite often, big data. So what is big data? Big data is nothing but a data is called big data if it satisfies three conditions. So first one is volume of data. The data should have enormous volume of data, maybe gigabytes, petabytes, huge volume of data. And second one is variety of data. The data will be coming in variety of formats, maybe text, maybe video, audio, lot of variety of formats. And another third characteristic is velocity of data. The data will come at a very high speed. Every second you'll be getting a lot of data from different sources and different formats. If data satisfies these three conditions of volume of data, variety of data, and velocity of data, then it is called big data. Okay. So earlier, you might have heard about these traditional softwares like Oracle. We call it RDBMS systems, relational database management systems, where if you want to access data, you have to keep the data in a specific format so that you can retrieve it back from that particular location. But with big data, the data, as we said, is coming from different directions, different formats. So the traditional systems cannot support big data anymore. That's why the new technologies are being introduced. So big data, when you go to the market, you hear softwares like Hadoop, Cassandra, Apache Spark, and all these things. So these softwares handle mainly big data. Okay, this is about big data. Now let me introduce about business analytics. Let me explain you the difference between analysis and analytics. Let me explain you with an example of, say, a coaching center where they train students and then they'll send for them for a competitive exam. So after the exam results are announced, they will analyze the data, and then they come up with nice reports or charts, and they say, okay, this many people got more than 90, this many people failed, and all these kind of information will be displayed in a kind of a chart format. But we call this as postmortem reports. That means you're analyzing something which already happened, and the management, when they look at the report, the first question they'll ask is, okay, based on the results, what kind of decisions I need to take? Unfortunately, analysis reports will not answer these questions. That's why people all over the world are moving towards analytics reports. So what is analytics? So if you go back to the same example, so if you look at the coaching center, so what in analytics, what we do is we take the current data of how many students are being trained, and we correlate the current data with the historic data the organization may have, maybe 10 years or 20 years of data. And we use some kind of statistical techniques like correlation, regression, a lot of statistical techniques, and we come up with the projections for the future. That means out of 10,000 students, for example, you're training this year, and we correlate, and then we say out of these 10,000 students, like these 40 are likely to fail, these 20 are likely to get more than 90, and all those things we give some kind of a predictive reports. So based on the reports, management is in a position to take some kind of corrective actions. If they know these students are going to fail, they know where to concentrate so that they can put more effort and do something so that they can control the results. That's why all over the world, business analytics is picking up. And the advantage is these business analytics reports can be used in variety of fields like marketing, sales, operations, HR. You can do projections up to quarter, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, any kind of projections you can do. So if you go to the market, you see a lot of softwares are available. For example, R, Tableau, Power BI, all these comes under business analytics softwares. Okay. Now let me talk about artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is not a new thing. It's been there for so many number of years. But earlier, the way we used to program computers is we used to teach computer, it's a certain, for example, you want to program an artificial intelligence, say, for example, for a game called chess. So you program the computer and the computer will analyze the next 100 moves or 200 moves, and then it will take a best decision and it will start playing. But there is one game called Go, which is a strategy game. It's a very old, ancient Chinese game. And there is no way you can write a program in artificial intelligence to play the game, and only humans can play. So one gentleman got an idea, then how come we cannot write a program and how humans are playing the game? Then he realized the way humans are trained or programmed is humans will learn the rules of the game, they start playing the game, and over a period of time, they gain experience. So they become masters or experts. So he thought, why don't we do the same thing, and why don't we teach the computers to learn and then let them learn and keep gaining some experience so that they become masters. So he called this machine learning, and so that he started teaching the machine learning. Machine learning is nothing but a program. So the program will give the guidelines to the computer, so the computer will learn. So he trained the program computer to learn I mean the game called Go. So he called this program as AlphaGo. And after a few years, the computer started playing, learned on its own, and became a master. Then he challenged the grandmaster. And to everybody's expectation, computer beat the human master. It opened up a new era, and then people started thinking of machine learning. Now people realize that you can teach computers in a lot of fields under machine learning, so that you can train the computers, and then the computer will start thinking on their own and they can answer a variety of questions. So this is about artificial intelligence and machine learning that we are talking about nowadays. And of course, Google purchased the AlphaGo, and then they renamed it as Google DeepMind. So in machine learning, there is another area, deep learning, which basically you go deep dive into these things, and you understand how the brain works. And there are a lot of other technology, buzzwords like convolutional neural networks and all those things. As I mentioned, I don't want to go deep into the technology. So what you need to understand when you hear about machine learning is basically we teach the machine how to learn, the machine will learn, and then over a period of time, it gains experience, and then it becomes a master. So in the commercially, there are a lot of softwares are available because everybody is jumping on the bandwagon of artificial intelligence. Of course, Microsoft AI, IBM Watson, Google DeepMind, TensorFlow is from Google. So a lot of softwares are available for artificial intelligence and machine learning. My next buzzword is Internet of Things. Internet of Things is nothing but anything can be connected to the internet. It can be anything. In order for a thing to be connected to internet, we call it a gadget. The gadget basically will have three things. One is a power connection, another one is a sensor, basically what information you want from that particular gadget, and another is the internet connection. If you have these three things, then it can be called as an IoT gadget. And IoT gadget is connected to the internet so that you can get the data, whatever data you want. So once the sensor collects the data, it will send to the cloud server, basically where you are programming, everything sits there. And there you do some kind of a rule-based logic, and then you push the data to your mobile. So if you look at a small example, for example, you have an air condition in your room, and you want to turn on the aircon if say the temperature is more than 25 degrees, and you want an alert if the temperature in the room is more than 25 degrees. So you'll put an IoT gadget. The IoT gadget will have a sensor, the temperature sensor. So it will keep measuring the temperature, and it will keep sending the temperature to the server. The server, you write a program, it will check that the temperature is more than 25. And if the temperature is more than 25, it will send an alert to you. So that's how the IoT gadget is connected to your mobile. So nowadays, a lot of sensors are available. Like you can measure like pressure, humidity, leaf wetness, atmosphere, a lot of things. And this is how the IoT gadgets will work, and literally anything can be connected to another thing or to the human. To the mobile or computer. You can access the information anywhere. So this is about Internet of Things. So when you talk about connectivity, the connectivity can be Wi-Fi or 3G or Zigbee, and there are a lot of new technologies that are coming up. We call it a narrowband IoT, NB-IoT, or Sigfox, LoRa. As I mentioned, these are it's a technical thing, so I don't want to go deep into it. As far as you need to understand, an IoT is nothing but a gadget. It will have three components: power connection, internet connectivity, and a sensor, whatever you want to sense. So that will be transmitted to the cloud-based server, and then you get the information. So cloud platforms, you can go for Amazon Web Services or Azure. These are the two famous cloud platforms. This is about Internet of Things. Next buzzword is cloud computing. So cloud computing is nothing but, like earlier, we have a PC, everything, the processing will be used to be done in your local computer. Nowadays, because the internet speed is very high, you don't really have to have the entire thing in your laptop or computer. The whole thing can sit in some other computer in some other country, and you can connect through internet from anywhere in the world, and you can access as if you're accessing from your own laptop. This is what we call cloud computing. Cloud computing is nothing but the entire information will be in some other place. We call it cloud, another some other physical location where you can access the information from anywhere in the world using internet with username and password. And nowadays you can have a variety of things like applications can be on cloud server, storage can be on cloud server, even processing power also can be on cloud server. The best example is your Gmail account. You don't have to have your Gmail software or hardware in your computer. That will be sitting in Google's server somewhere, and you will be connecting it through a username and password, and you start using it. So people are moving towards cloud computing because it's very economical and it's very less cumbersome to the clients. Clients don't have to invest in hardware, software, or anything. That's why cloud computing is picking up quite a lot. Okay. Now let me talk about digital marketing. Digital marketing is nowadays, as I mentioned, we are in the digital era, and everybody is using their mobiles more, and nobody is interested in the print media anymore. So we call it online marketing or social marketing, search marketing, email marketing. There are a lot of buzzwords that are used in this digital marketing. Digital marketing, in the broad sense, is nothing but you use all these digital technologies to market your product or services so that you'll reach your clients. So there are a lot of other buzzwords that are there. For example, search engine optimization. Search engine optimization is everybody will try to search in Google. For example, I'm in deep tech business, and my clients may want to search in deep tech consulting. So I want my clients to pick up my website. So I will optimize my website links and all so that the search engine will pick up my website first. That is search engine optimization. Or some other companies like Google will charge for the advertisement. They have different ways they will charge. For example, they have two types like pay per view or pay per click. For example, you go to Google, and so for example you type deep tech, and I want my advertisement to be displayed on the page. So Google will display the my advertisement on the page, and the browser, I mean the person who is typing in the browser may click on my advertisement or may not click on the advertisement. So Google charges in two ways. Pay per view is even though the customer don't click on my advertisement, he viewed my advertisement, so I have to pay Google. That is pay per view. Or there is another thing is pay per click. So I'll pay only if my customer clicks on my advertisement. Even if he views, I don't pay. I'll pay only if he clicks the advertisement. So a lot of other things are there: pay per view, pay per click, and a lot of marketing things are there. So as far as digital marketing is concerned, we do marketing using these digital channels like Google or Facebook or Twitter or all these things. Okay, this is about digital marketing. Let's talk about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is nothing but practice of defending your computers, servers, mobile data, network, whatever you call, either it will be hardware or software, to protect yourself from other people stealing your information or spoiling your information. So this particular area we call it cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, there are a lot of things like malware. Usually we call it malware. Malware is nothing but an acronym for malicious software. I mean that is a wrong software which will try to hamper your systems or steal your data. So there are a lot of other names are there like spyware, ransomware, virus, worms, and all those things. So as far as what do you mean by cybersecurity is protecting or defending your computers. It can be hardware or software, so that other people cannot intrude or steal your data. That is cybersecurity. Let's talk about chatbots. Nowadays, if you go to any website, suddenly a pop-up chatbot will come and it will ask you for any kind of help you want. So chatbot is a computer program. It is an artificial intelligence powered computer program to simulate human conversation. For example, it can be used in any kind of field. For example, there is a HR department. In HR department, a company, you imagine there are like 10,000 employees. The employees will have a lot of questions. How many leaves I have, or how many. I mean, how do I download this form? Where do I find this? A lot of standard, typical questions. So, with the help of this chatbot, you can program in artificial intelligence, and the one chatbot can answer all 10,000 employees. Whenever an employee wants to find out any information regarding these HR related things, the chatbot can answer. That's why chatbots are becoming very popular, and every company or every organization that has a website wants to include a chatbot, so that any person that comes to the website, chatbot can help answer the questions. And not only text, but we can also do voice activated chatbots. And there is another new technology that has come up, we call digital humans. See, people are not interested to text something, so they are interested to have a conversation, real conversation, as if they're talking to a person. So these new digital humans will talk to the people in their local language with same kind of human empathy, expression, and all these things, so that the customers will have a feeling as if they're talking to a real human. This is digital human. So inside, again, the backend, they'll be connected to the AI chatbot softwares, but the customer will feel as if he's talking to a human. Okay. Now let me talk about quantum computing. I'm sure most of you might not have heard of this term quantum computing. To introduce about talk about quantum computing, normally computers, conventional computers use bits, right? Bits are nothing but how do you transfer the data, bits and bytes. But in quantum computing, quantum computers use what we call quantum bits or qubits. So as far as we know, non-technical point of view, what you need to understand about quantum computing is, in qubits they store enormous amount of information, and at the same time they use very, very less energy. So that means when the technology is still in the native stages, and if the technology matures and then people start using quantum computing based computers, the same computer can run maybe around a million times faster than your conventional computer now. For example, in the organizations, often you see, every 6 months they ask you to change password, because why? With the existing technology, existing softwares, you can crack any password within 6 months. But with the help of quantum computing, if it comes, just imagine, million times faster, and I don't know, maybe it can crack the password in maybe few hours or few minutes, you don't know. So quantum computing is still in the basic stages, but once it comes into the mature stage, it will store information in qubits, the quantum bits, which will store enormous amount of information and use very less energy. So from a customer point of view, the processors will have more power. It will be like a million times faster than existing conventional computers. Okay. Now let me talk about IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and SOLAS. I mean, if you're an IT field, you are more familiar with these things. Each thing stands for example, IaaS stands for infrastructure as a service. As I mentioned before, nowadays everything is cloud-based, so you don't really have to own or buy anything, and you can rent anything you want. So if you want to rent infrastructure, some other company will maintain the infrastructure and it will rent you so that you can pay per use. That is IaaS. Similarly, platform as a service, it is nothing but hardware tools that are available at the internet. So you don't own the hardware tool, you just rent it from some other company and pay per use. Similarly, software as a service, that means software is available over the internet. You will use the software and you will pay per use. The best example is your Gmail. So another new term that is coming up is solution as a service. It is a step above SaaS. So the entire solution of a business is offered at pay-per-use basis model. For example, I talked about analytics before. If you talk about SaaS in analytics, the company which develops the analytics software will give access to the software. That means the customer can log into the server with the username and password. He can access the software, but he still needs to customize to suit to his requirements. How did he transfer the data? How did he design his forms and all those things under SaaS? But when it comes to solution as a service, a company will entirely do the total solution for the customer, and the customer will simply log into the server and start using with his data and with his reports. That is solution as a service. Now let me talk about urban farming. I'm sure some of you might have heard about this word, but urban farming, for example, in India, you might have heard about this hydroponics. Hydroponics is quite popular topic. But hydroponics is nothing but, you go grow plants, leafy vegetables inside an urban environment. This setting is a typical setting in Singapore. We have a multi-story car park. So normally in a car park, top floor is always empty, because you don't really have so many number of cars. So one company offered the government, they want to produce these leafy vegetables called lettuce on top of a car park using these hydroponics, and it was very successful. Then they have improved the productivity by almost 10 times, and now the Singapore government decided to convert almost all parking lot top floors to hydroponics. They're giving to people who are interested to grow leafy vegetables. So urban farming is nothing but growing these leafy vegetables, I mean, whatever it is, in the urban setting, maybe in walls, rooftops or whatever. And there is another thing that is recently come up and most advanced in urban farming is what we call controlled environment agriculture. Controlled environment agriculture is much more advanced than your standard hydroponics. That means inside a closed room, you control the entire environment. When I say entire environment, you'll be controlling including temperature, humidity, moisture, even to the extent how much carbon dioxide you need to inject to the plants. And all the leafy vegetables will be produced in kind of a rack format, so that in the same space you can produce more because the productivity is more. You will be seeing small kinds of LED lights here because the light is controlled. So you can grow typically any kind of fruit or vegetable you want to grow because entire environment is controlled. So Singapore, a lot of companies have experimented and they have grown like tomatoes, strawberries, blueberries, whatever you name it, you just change the temperature. I mean, you basically simulate the environment that is suitable for that particular crop and you can grow it inside a closed room. This is controlled environment agriculture. So basically, you can produce any kind of fruits or vegetables, flowers, or whatever you want to grow. So what you need to understand by controlled environment agriculture is you control the entire environment parameters, including light, humidity, temperature, and even carbon dioxide. This is about CEA. Now let me talk about fintech. This is a famous buzzword. Everybody might have heard about it. Fintech stands for financial technology. Finance and technology. If you combine technology in to enhance any kind of finance related things, it comes under fintech. Okay, so basically use technology to enhance financial services and processes. So let me explain you with the help of a standard example. You all know bank. We go to bank, we deposit some money, and the bank will give us some interest, and the same money bank will give to outside person, collect more interest, they'll keep some margin, and they give us interest. So in this kind of setting, we call bank as a trusted partner. That means why we go to the bank, because we deposit our money, we trust the bank that they will give back our money whenever we want, and they'll give back the promised interest. That is what we call trusted partner. Now with the help of this financial technology, the trusted so-called trusted partner like bank can be totally eliminated, and software can replace the activities of the bank. For example, in fintech, one company has created a platform where you want to deposit money, you can go to that platform and you say, okay, I want to deposit 100,000 rupees, and then lenders will also come to the same platform and they will bid for your money. One guy will say, I give you 10%, another guy will say, I give you 12%. So you agree. I mean, basically the platform will do some kind of a matchmaking, and both parties agree. All the paperwork will be done instantaneously, and then you can use your digital signatures, and that's it, your deal is done. Your money from your bank is transferred to their money to their account. So this will eliminate the trusted partner called bank, which is beneficial for both parties because the bank's commission is literally shared between the buyer and seller. So the technology wise, it's very great. Fintech is great, but the problem is the people who develop these kind of technologies don't guarantee that you will get back your money, because they don't know who is going to take your money, and there's no guarantee that you'll get back your money. So the trust is the biggest question in fintech. That's why financial transactions, the trust is the main thing. And when you talk about fintech, you keep hearing another buzzword which is called blockchain. So the blockchain came because of this trust element in financial technology. So all the information, whenever the transaction is completed, it will be stored in small chunks of what we call a block, and each block is linked to another block through a chain. That's how we call it a blockchain. So the advantage of blockchain is whenever a financial transaction happens, the information is stored, secured, and you cannot erase it. So that kinds of gives a security that yes, this information is captured and nobody can tamper it, and it is safe and secure. And the best example is a Bitcoin, who started using this blockchain technology and they became very famous. And of course, it started off as in the financial technology, but nowadays blockchain technology is being used in other fields also. Basically, in generalized terms, we call it as a distributed ledger. So information is stored in kinds of a small chunks called blocks, and each block is linked to another block through a chain. So from a non-technical point of view, what you need to understand by blockchain is the information is captured, stored, and it cannot be erased. That gives the customer a kind of a security. If the system uses blockchain, and yes, the information whatever you're getting is authentic and it is not changed and it is not tampered. The other typical examples of using blockchain technology is, for example, in universities where you can offer degrees. Like nowadays, you keep hearing about a lot of fake degrees. So the university can issue degrees online using this blockchain technology. So anybody who wants to verify can go to the university website and can verify. And because they use blockchain technology, they feel they get the assurance that yes, this whatever I'm verifying is genuine and safe. This is one area where you can use blockchain technology. and this is being experimented in a lot of other fields. Maybe in one day you can do like your transactions. Maybe you want to sell your assets online using blockchain technology, because everything is trusted, and then everything is captured and nobody can erase the transfer of data. Okay, this is about blockchain. Now let me talk about augmented reality. There is another term which is closely associated with augmented reality, that is virtual reality. People often get confused that they use these terms because without knowing what is the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. Now let me explain what do we mean by augmented reality. For example, you're looking at a brochure of a washing machine. It's a 2D brochure, and you're looking at the brochure, and you like the product, but you don't know how really the product works because it's a 2D and you cannot really see the 3D kind of a thing in action. So using augmented reality, you open when you take up your mobile phone, and there will be a QR code given on top of the brochure. So you just scan the QR code, and it will automatically link to the website, and it automatically opens up that particular washing machine. You can see in video how it is working. So in augmented reality, often you will use a mobile phone so that your whatever you're seeing is augmented to a next step. For example, you're looking at something in 2D, and with augmented reality, you can see the next level to 3D. This is augmented reality. Whereas virtual reality is a totally new, complete immersion to a new, another, what you call, another world. You often put a kind of equipment to your eyes, and then you'll be transported into a number of imagined environments. Inside only you can see. You'll be physically sitting here, but while wearing these goggles or other things, you will be seeing a lot of other imagined environments. So this is about virtual reality. So the main difference between augmented reality and virtual reality is augmented reality often like digital images. So using your mobile phone, you can go back to the next level and see the 3D at the next level. So your whatever you're seeing, your experience will be augmented. Whereas virtual reality, often you need to have another headset to create a totally immersive 3D experience. That is about virtual reality. Now let me talk about robotic process automation. I'm sure some of you might not have heard of this word. So robotic process automation is nothing but a business process automation technology based on artificial intelligence. That means there is a standard process which we can automate using artificial intelligence, and you don't need a clerical person to take care of a job. Let me explain. A company, for example, they receive invoices from their vendor. You get an invoice in PDF format to your accountant. So the accountant, the process is he or she will open the mail, download that invoice in PDF format, and look for some information like maybe invoice number, the amount, currency, when we need to pay, and key information. Extract the key information from that particular PDF file, and enter that information in company's accounting system, because they need to enter the information into the company system so that they can process that particular invoice. This is a standard repetitive process, right? It's an autonomous, repetitive process which can be automated using technology or artificial intelligence now. So this process we call robotic process automation. The software will take care of the entire thing. The software will open the PDF. It will know where to search for the information. It will copy the information and paste it to your server. And believe me or not, it will do like maybe like 100 times faster than even your experienced person who is doing this type of repetitive process for n number of years. So this is what we call robotic process automation. So using this robotic process automation, you can automate any number of standard repetitive monotonous processes in your organization. There are a lot of softwares are available, the famous one being UiPath. UiPath is a robotic process automation software in which you can customize it to suit your process, where you can automate your process. So let me talk about another technology, what we call is a digital twin. So digital twin is nothing but, for example, you're a manufacturer of a, say, a machine, right? You design, you manufacture a machine, and the machine will go out in the market, and it will be like functioning in the market for say a 10 number of years, right? The person who designed the machine don't know how it is performing in the market. He will know only after few years, and they say, okay, after 5 years, usually this particular component is failing. That is the standard complaint they will receive from the customers, and then that will be like after few years, only then they will know something is failing, and then based on that they have to analyze and what is going wrong, and then they can do some kind of modifications in the design. But with the help of digital twin, what we do is we put a lot of sensors inside the machine, and these sensors will transmit the data, live real-time data to our server, so that the person, the designer, can see what is happening in the real world inside the machine. So the machine will be running live, and then the person designer can see from his computer how the performance, I mean, how the machine is performing inside. How is the temperature? How is the vibration, noise? He can get a lot of graphs and see how his design is performing in the real world in real time, so that he can take corrective actions and do a lot of research and modify his design, in real time. So this is digital twin, and a lot of things are happening in this digital twin area. And I mean, this can be, I mean, digital twin is nothing but you will have the same exact replica of your design in the outside world, and you can have the same replica of what is happening in the outside world in your computer in real time. This is digital twin. This digital twin technology is, I mean, helping a lot of industries. For example, like why we put a lot of these sensors inside the machine is like, you take aerospace industry, for example, they have a component called landing gear. So landing gear is very costly spare part, but unfortunately, if the spare part, I mean, if the part fails, you cannot buy in the market because you have to manufacture one part that suits your design drawings requirement. So if landing gear fails, you have to order, and then it will take, say, like 3 months or 4 months of time to get the piece. So it's always challenging thing for the industry, because they cannot invest and put a lot of components in store, because finance always will say you're wasting money in inventory. At the same time, they cannot afford to have the not to have the inventory, because if something goes wrong, they cannot wait for 6 months, because the downtime cost is very, very high. So with the help of digital twin technology, what we do is we put a lot of sensors inside the machinery, and then we monitor it in real time. That means a lot of graphs will be being generated in the system, and the system, I mean, artificial intelligence program will continuously monitor the performance of your physical machine that is working outside in the real world environment. And then if there is any erratic behavior, immediately it will alert the supervisor, so that it can estimate the remaining life of that particular component, so that the people can decide, and then they can take corrective action, and they can order the piece, so that they will receive the piece just in time. This will save a lot of time for the downtime, because they don't have to invest in inventory. And not only in inventory, for example, if you take up aeroplane, they have thousands of components. How many components they can buy and keep it in inventory? They don't know which component will fail. But with the help of this technology, you can predict early which component is likely to fail, so that you can order that component in time, so that the downtime will be less, so the inventory cost will be very low. So this is about digital twin technology, and this picking up a lot nowadays. Now let me talk about smart cities. This is my last buzzword. I mean, everybody talks about smart cities nowadays. A smart city is nothing but, in an urban area, you use a lot of these IoT sensors to collect the data, and the data will come to the central command control room, where you can analyze the data, and then you come up with some kind of meaningful insight, so that the city management can serve better the citizens of the city. So when we talk about sensors, as I mentioned, you have hundreds of sensors, and you can measure a lot of parameters in the city, like air pollution, noise, parking, traffic, any type of thing you want to measure, you can measure. And then you can collect the data to a central server, and then you analyze the data, and then you come up with some kind of a meaningful, what we call alerts, and then you can help better the citizens. Nowadays, we are talking about what we call smart pole. In any city or municipality, you'll be having these street lights, right? So the new street light, we call it a smart pole, will have a solar thing. So it will be like, you don't need electricity. It will have LED lights, and then we will put one environmental monitoring gadget. Basically, it will measure your PMI, CO2, noise, vibration, whatever you want to measure. And then we put one camera, so that you can capture the 360-degree view of that particular street light. And nowadays, people are adding a lot of things. You can have a public address system, even electric charging station also you can put in the same pole. We call it smart pole. And we put a lot of these smart poles in key areas in the city, and we capture all the information in real time to your central command control room, where we can control or analyze all these data to take some decisions. I mean, in some municipalities, you might have been seeing, there will be a lot of key junctions where the traffic will be more, so that the police will go in a jeep, and then they keep announcing, you take out that car, you cannot park here, and all those things. Now, with the help of technology, sitting in the command control room, they can do the same thing in the entire city, because wherever they want to announce, they can switch on that particular pole and they can talk from the command control room, and it will be audible in that particular area, and they can see in the 360-degree view of what's happening in that junction. And nowadays the technology is like that. The camera also, from your command control room, you can zoom, tilt, and all those things you can do. So smart cities is nothing but using these advanced technologies like AI, IoT, and analytics to improve better the quality of people. Okay, I think this is my last buzzword. So thank you very much for patiently listening to my presentation. With this, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and now I would like to take up questions.
Very good. Excellent. I think that you did such a fantastic job. Actually, Hans was wanting you to slow down a little bit, but that's going to be difficult. But
Yeah.
fantastic job. I think it's most of the audiences, a lot of the audience from India, so that they are used to fast speaking. But
Okay.
we have about 100 people here, so
Good.
yeah, I mean, you've explained everything so nicely that
Yeah.
yeah, that really helped me a lot understand all of these concepts very nicely. So I'm sure the audience also has gained a lot, and I open it up for questions, folks. Let's do that. Let's have some questions, and so that Kishore can explain in some more detail, clarify anything that you have to ask. Okay. So let's do it. Everybody's saying it's a nice presentation, very nice session, but ask questions.
So
Okay.
thank you.
No
Yeah.
point saying nice presentation.
Yeah.
Let's have a little discussion here, and
Yeah.
see what how we can clarify some more about some of the things that we're talking about here. So it looks like the future is all of these things
Yeah.
in every aspect of life. And
Uh,
since you're from Singapore, I think already you might have started using a lot of these
Yeah.
technologies
Singapore,
in
in
the
fact, they're marching towards to be the first smart nation in the world. Yeah, they're aiming for that.
Krishna, Sesha, this is Hans. I just wanted to ask our audience, of the 20 strategic topics that you have there, fascinating, are
Yeah.
there any, as we look at the next 3-4 months, issues that our audience that is participating would like us to offer a webinar in greater detail? Let me
No,
just
yeah, sure. We have 10 webinars, I think, we associated with Skill Development Corporation, and each webinar is dedicated to one particular topic where we go deep dive into that particular topic. We talk about case studies, how people are using it, advantages, disadvantages, and all those things. Famous ones is artificial intelligence, analytics, IoT. These three things, I mean, most of the people interested. Yeah.
So how do you offer these webinars, the 10 webinars that you're talking about?
I mean, each
What's the
webinar will be dedicated to one particular topic. For example, artificial
yeah,
intelligence, we dedicatedly talk about only about artificial intelligence.
sure. Now, if I wanted you to do these 10 webinars, if I was in a college or something, how would I go
Definitely,
about
we'll do it.
requesting you?
We'll
How
definitely do
would
it
I,
because every month we are doing it for the colleges free of cost.
every
Every
month you're doing
month,
free of cost.
every month, yeah, because all the colleges they can connect and they can students can listen and learn. Yeah.
Every month you're doing one, or how many are you doing every month?
One every month, one topic.
One topic. And so by in 10 months you cover all the 10 topics.
Yeah, one topic. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think the audience would really like how to find out how to make that happen. Is there a website that they can go to connect to the
I mean,
schedule
right
of
now we are giving only to the I mean the colleges that we have already MOUs with.
the
I mean,
members? Okay, I
yeah,
see.
in
Okay.
future we want to expand it to, I mean, people at large. Yeah.
Can you maybe, if you want, you can make a pitch for your business? Explain to us what is it that you do for the colleges, because a lot of people.
Okay. Colleges, what we are trying to do is we're creating center of deep tech excellence in college premises, where we offer support from Singapore on these advanced technologies free of cost. We don't charge anything for the college. So we help them to build their consulting division under our guidance and support. So what we do is we train the students. Of course, there is a charge for the college. We call it Institution Development Program, where we charge 10,000 rupees per college per month, and any number of students, unlimited number of students can attend, including faculty. And then every 2 months we train on one topic. For example, 2 months we talk about business intelligence, another 2 months artificial intelligence. It's a year-round program, and all our courses we call it industry ready talent program. See, what we have noticed is industry needs talent, but unfortunately what they're getting trained in academy and what industry wants, there is a little bit of gap. So we are trying to fill that gap. So when we train, we keep the end role in mind. For example, we want to place the student in business analytics role. So we see what is the business analytics software that is popularly used in market. For example, Microsoft Power BI. So we train the students from Power BI point of view, Microsoft curriculum, so that they can go for Microsoft certification. And after the training is complete, so normally we encourage third year students. So 1 year we'll be training them in AI, IoT, and all these things. After training is complete, the final year we will give them a chance to work in our project, so that they can gain some kind of software development experience right from getting the requirements from client, executing and handing over to the client. And after they do couple of projects, when they're ready to take up the job, we have another portal, industry ready talent portal, where we aggressively pitch to the market. We have trained these candidates, we know them very well, we train them in our projects, they're ready to serve you, and then they can take our guys. So we don't promise any job, but definitely will improve the employment potential of the candidates. Yeah, everybody is interested in this thing, because when we say uh, developing the consulting division free of cost, everybody is interested, because like it's money for them. And all our products or services is what we call solution as a service. That means we charge them on a monthly basis. We don't sell any software or hardware. We give them a service, we charge them on a monthly basis. So when we share the revenue with the college for the consulting division, it's like a sustainable thing. Every month they keep getting the revenue as long as the client stays with us. And fortunately, we are asking the management to help us to spread the word. So they are spreading the word to their known circle, and we're doing the pitch, and we are getting the works. And recently, one college has come up. They have a lot of UGC grants for the students to do some kind of projects. So we said we will help them. They're getting like 5 lakh, 10 lakh projects, execute with the help of students. And if they're interested, we can partner with them and develop some products. And then when we market, they will get their share. So basically, they'll be partnering us in the product marketing, and batch after batch, when the new batch comes, they'll continue enhancing the features of that product. So the whole model works out is we are very close to the customer, we are very optimum cost, and at the same time we can give service, because the customer, my team is very close to the customer. And for the colleges, the students will get knowledge, experience, and then they will help develop their own consulting division under our guidance. So it's like a win-win situation for all. Yeah.
So fascinating. So we'll probably take you up on that later on. The few questions have come in about the actual topics that you talked about. So let me go one by one. This is from Tinashe. It says, give insights on how digital transformation can be used for remote laboratories.
Remote laboratories, in the sense, see, normally people think digital transformation is only for IT people. That is a very wrong concept. People, when they talk about digital things, they think it's only IT. But it is about the business, how it can improve the business, your process, how the technology can help solve your problem. I'm surprised to see, like in China, now they were using this technology in mining industry. The guy who is supposed to do the mining equipment, he's sitting in his room. It's like some kind of a video game kind of a thing. He's physically operating the mine, and all the vehicles, everything is connected to the internet. And once he puts the thing in the vehicle, automatically they're moving. So anything can be connected to the internet nowadays, and the technology can transform any business. In Singapore, government wants to put these IoT gadgets inside the car, so that they can literally control your dashboard. So how much speed you're going, at what road, and all these things. And for example, you're parking in a place where you're not supposed to park, immediately you'll get an SMS alert, hey, you're not supposed to park here, take out your car. Government wants to implement these kind of things, so they will have full control on what's happening. And in future, the road tax also, they want to like give on pay per use basis. For example, you want to use your car today, and maybe online you can pay the road tax for that particular day, and you can drive your car. Yeah, a lot of things are happening.
So it looks like a lot of potential for remote laboratories. So
yes.
Felix has a question: are the twin devices integrated with ethical aspects of collecting live data?
Okay. It's like, it's mainly used for the design people to understand how the design is working in the real environment. That is a purpose. So it's like, the customer will know, yes, they're collecting the data, they're using it for improving the design thing. Yeah. It's not for commercial use. It's basically to understand how they can improve the design using real world data.
Okay. So next question from Tripti: is quantum processing being used practically now?
No, it's very native stages, but it holds a lot of potential. Once it comes into the mainstream, everything will change. Yeah. Just imagine, the same thing we are doing, it will be like 100,000 times faster, So,
Question
yeah.
from Parag. Uh, how is robotic process automation? Is it going to affect the job market for IT professionals in India?
Again, I say, don't talk about IT professionals. It is a process that the industry is using. For example, they have an accountant exclusively to get the data from the invoices and key into their SAP system. That can be completely eliminated. They don't need such kind of I mean, basically, where there is a repetitive process for a person to do it, you can completely eliminate it.
Okay.
I mean, you'll be surprised to know, in AI now people have talking about digital employees. I talked
Oh,
about digital humans. These digital humans can handle a lot of low-end works. They're trying to, like, for example, in a company, for example, you want the digital employee to set your password, Wi-Fi settings. Some small tasks they're already taking up.
so there will be some jobs lost, but I guess there'll be new types
More
of
jobs
jobs
will be
created.
done.
New
More
types
jobs
of
will be
jobs.
done. Yes.
New types of jobs will be created. Okay.
Yeah.
Mugdha says, can you throw some light on the cost benefit analysis of CEA? And what is CEA? You know what
Controlled
CEA is?
environment agriculture. Yeah.
Okay.
Controlled environment agriculture.
Okay.
Yeah. So the
So what
cost
is the
benefit is, for
cost
example,
benefit?
for example, a country like Singapore, we don't have
Yeah.
anything here. We cannot produce anything here. Everything is imported. In the
Uh-huh.
last COVID period, we suffered a lot because there were a lot of disruptions and we cannot get vegetables and all these things. So government decided to use technology to develop homegrown things. They're investing a lot. They have a plan called 30 by 30. By 2030, government wants to produce 30% of local consumption in Singapore. And we don't have land. So they're betting heavily on technology, and you will not believe. Recently, I have seen one guy in industrial area. He constructed a 7-story building. Inside the building, he's doing aquaponics. He's growing fish literally using this technology. Lot of machines, automatically the temperature will be monitored, the feed will be given, everything. But this will work in countries like Singapore because they can afford it. But countries like India, the technology is very costly than the actual thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sikandar is asking, how about personal data? Will it be preserved in this technology?
That is the biggest challenge now, and a lot of governments are coming up with personal data protection acts and all these things. That's the biggest challenge. Yeah.
Okay. Mayur is asking, what is this role of mathematics in all of these technologies? Is
I
it
mean,
essential to know mathematics in detail
e-
to get
ev-
some level of knowledge in all these things?
everything boils down to mathematics because of that, now we are calling this as STEM. You might have heard of STEM, science,
Right.
technology, engineering, and mathematics. All
Right.
these things go hand in hand.
So the fundamentals of mathematics are very critical to understand all
Yes.
of these emerging technologies. So listen up, all you students who are in college. Don't sleep during the math classes. So Sesha Srinivas asking, what will be the budgetary requirements for, again, it's going to CEA in the 2000 square feet. I don't know, that's too much level of detail probably.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. Yeah.
Vikas Gupta
Exactly.
says virtual reality for lab experiments and complicated machines. I guess
Yeah.
that's possible, right? To get
It
to
is
do lab
possible, but
experiment.
again, you have to develop it like a product. For example,
Ah,
you want to simulate a heart surgery, you can create a virtual
ah.
reality program, and the students can learn putting the goggles and see how they do it in practical. Yeah.
How is Sanjay says, how is digital twin used in predictive maintenance? You talked about it already for the
Yeah.
landing
Yeah.
gear, right?
Yeah. Predictive maintenance is we put the sensors inside the machine. So in real time, you'll be analyzing the data so that if any erratic behavior, automatically the program will alert the supervisor so that he can take some corrective action.
Okay, Shraddha wants a little more light on the fin technology. What is the future of this fin technology that you talked about?
Fin technology wise, it is there, but as I said, the trust is the main concern. The people who have developed these softwares, they don't want to give any guarantee that you'll get your money back. So it's like that is
But
the main challenge now.
is blockchain going to solve that problem?
I mean, see, countries like Singapore, okay, when you do a transaction, they'll take your identity card, your bank account, and all these things. You just imagine in a country like India, so you gave online a loan of 10 lakhs. What's the guarantee that you're going to get back? Who is going to give you the guarantee? Yeah,
Yeah, so a lot of ethical other issues
yeah,
involved in social sciences,
yeah.
psychology, and all that. Okay. So a couple of more questions. Sikandar is asking, what do you think about Neuralink? Or Neuralink? Do you know anything about Neuralink?
No, I've not heard about Neuralink. Okay.
The term is not familiar. So
Yeah.
Felix, learning on demand.
Yeah.
You know, is that something that you see happening?
Yeah,
Learning
not
on
only learning, everything will be on demand in future. See, for example, you look at the aerospace industry, you know, earlier we used to pay for the ticket, even if you eat or don't eat, you have to pay the same fixed amount. Now, budget airlines, you pay for what you use. So similarly in future, for example, you want to pay for insurance, so they will analyze your data, you know, what date, what time you're going from where to where, and they'll analyze a lot of data in that particular time, how many accidents will happen, what are the chances, and all those things, and they'll fix the premium for that particular journey. So everything will be on demand. Everything will be on demand. Yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. So let me give this back to Hans and anybody else who wants to talk. Hans.
Thank you very, very much. I want to express my thanks to my brother and friend Prasad of the University of Emerging Technologies for introducing you, Sesha, to our community and to work with Krishna, with IFES and the GDC. Many, many thanks. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, of the 20 topics, I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating, as Krishna is saying, and we have a learning journey to go through. I've mentioned before the call, you know, our interest to look more deeply into the whole questions of cybersecurity, and I'm identifying some individuals because a number of people globally have approached me in terms of that particular topic. But there are other topics, and those who participated today, please write to us and let you know we're certainly open to that. Let me just make a couple of comments in terms of, because this is part of our partnership with IUCE and IFES and GDC per se. What's very important to us, and we are planning already for our conference in Madrid, Spain in November, the engagement of students. And I know there are many, many very, very interested students in India, of course, and globally. And if there are students that are participating today, get in touch with me. I will link you with student leaders as we're planning our Madrid conference. It will be hybrid virtual in November. And certainly your engagement, of course, professors and deans and our corporate colleagues are very, very important. I just wanted to make that very, very clear. In terms of what's going on in the IFES and GDC communities, there are 2 awards that are being offered. Is the Duncan Fraser Award of IFES. And we've already received several nominations, and some including, well, from different countries, and also the GDC Diversity Award, where we work in partnership with Siemens and George Mason University, and we are looking forward to receive applications on that. And that's also going on in the global community, and we've sent out elections for both IFES and GDC. I just want to bring this in and look at your emails and what have you. And just finally, Sisha, thank you for your thoughtfulness and time. You're very, very, very interesting professional. I look forward very much to stay in touch with you. Krishna, thank you kindly.
Thank you so much, Sesha Kishore, and thank you, Hans. Thank you for audience of 100+ people. I think it's exciting. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, okay? And see you next time, okay? I'll be in touch with you.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
About what we're doing.
With you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.